my initial reaction to John dying was, oh fuck, I'm left with the miserable one. No, joking aside, it was I was just numb. I didn't have any feelings at all. It was kind of surreal space. And I went over and saw Pete, and I just, it was quite obvious that we had two I mean, for once we had a choice whether we could stop or go on. But then we seriously did consider the fact that it was a sold out tour. It was the night before it was due to begin, and we added up the number of people that the tour would employ, even albeit some of them for a summer, but some of them just for a night. And it added into the thousands when you added all the gigs and the trucking companies and the PA and the lights. And you just think, well, you know, rock and roll and the Who's kind of space in rock and roll, we've always kind of been, in some ways, the bloke on the street and reflected their lives. I don't think there's ever been a barrier between the Who and their audience like there has been between some of the major groups, where there becomes like an untouchable thing happen to their image. That the Who has always been very touchable and very, very real. And so Peter, so you know, I initially felt that we should go on just to show people of our age that we are all in the drop zone. But what do you do when your mates die? Most of my mates are dead, unfortunately, and it gets a bit lonely sometimes. But what do? You can't stop living. You've got to go on. So I just told Pete whatever he wanted to do, I would give him 100% support. And it's worked out incredibly well. It was very difficult. I don't think I've come out of it yet, to be really honest. I don't know. It was good in some ways that it helped the initial blow. I think once you have a shock like that of a really, really close friend dying, but you kind of get it in perspective, in some kind of sense of perspective in your brain, and make a decision. You kind of attain this steely resolve. So once the decision was made that we were going to do it, the first show was difficult emotionally, but once we'd done the first show, it didn't get any more difficult. It didn't. That's not to say I didn't miss John. I probably miss him more now than I did then. It's been such a kind of bumpy ride in the last 2 years in a lot of ways. That Pete and I have become much more close together. I think it's given the music a new lease of life, and that's in no detriment to John whatsoever. It's just by the fact that it's the same but different. And in the fact that it's different, it opens up different channels for both Pete and myself to explore. We can phrase different because certain bass notes are in different places, and things like that. The band always seems to get louder for some reason, and I can never bloody hear myself. On every time we do a film, for some reason or other, the band seems to turn up, and I can never hear my monitors. Plus the fact that this was the end of a tour, and it was a particularly loud gig. And I remember, my God, this is hard work tonight. Because every time, it's a nightmare for a singer not to be able to hear themselves. Because you tend to over-sing. And I hate doing it. But unfortunately, with the state of my hearing, and having a loud band to play against, or sing against, it's just the way it comes out. I've always thought that rock and roll, Pete's position in rock and roll is unique, and I've always thought that rock and roll has only dealt with adolescence and in a good way, but I've always believed it's going to have to grow up, otherwise it will die. So I've always thought that Pete Townshend is possibly the only person out there at the moment who's to say that Bono might not do it as he gets older, and so many other people, Chris Martin and all those people. But Pete Townshend at the moment, to me, is the only one who can drag it kicking and screaming into middle and old age and keep it rock and roll and make it have meaning. And so from that perspective, I always believe that we would always, somewhere or the other, be back, yeah. Because I don't think Pete is in my view is never going to be giving up easily. With you can't replace John and Keith. They were extraordinary people, and personalities and musicians. There's only one drummer like him. I mean, Zach can kind of mimic-ish. Well, it doesn't really. Moon, but it's never really like Moon. And obviously you can't replace the banter that Moon used to do on the stage. And there'll only be one John Entwistle, thank God. But I prefer to focus on the fact that those doors are closed to us. But Zach is a great drummer, and he's got his own style. All right, it's not the same, but it doesn't mean it's worse. And I want to focus on the new stuff rather than just the old stuff. And that's what I'm really pleased about where we're at the moment with these two new songs. These Good Looking Boys, in the old sense of the word, a real hit song. Red Wine is a little bit clunky on stage, but that spark is still there, and it sounds as fresh as it did in the 70s and 60s. So obviously it doesn't matter about the other players in the band. The chemistry is between Pete and myself. Pete's fluid at the moment, and he's got a real writing binge going on. We're optimistic that we can have an album in the can by November, which will be really good news for next year, because I mean, even if you had an album of great songs, we possibly only would play 4 of them on stage, so it doesn't really change things very, very much, really, does it? But it would be spiritually nice. Well, going to Australia again, to me it's unfinished business. They only ever saw us in our embryo stage in the 60s, where we were kind of finding our feet, finding a voice, finding out who we were. And it's going to be great to go back and show them we turned into quite a good band.